Hi everyone, welcome to Doc Hill's study where I help you get ready for your National 5 biology assessments. In this video we'll be walking through questions from an official SQA paper. The paper and the marking guide are both produced by the Scottish Qualifications Authority, the SQA, and all rights to that material belong to them. I'm using these resources strictly for educational purposes here on this non-commercial channel to support students like you in preparing for your exams. I'll be using the SQA's marking guide to highlight what answers are accepted, but keep in mind it usually only shows some of the correct answers and doesn't explain the reasoning behind them. That's where I come in. For each question, I'll walk you through the thinking process, explain what the question is really asking, and point out some of the common pitfalls to avoid. If anything doesn't make sense to you, or you want to ask about a specific point, feel free to leave a comment. I'll do my best to help you out. If you find this helpful, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future walkthroughs. Let's get started. This is question 7 in section 2 of the exam. Okay, so let's have a look at this question. Look, again, we're not having to do any calculations. We're getting a wee bit of a break from our calculator in this middle part of the exam, but let's see how we go. The diagram relates to reproduction in humans, all right? So we have two organs here. Testes is one of them and organ G is another. The organ G is producing an egg. The testes are producing sperm. This is gamete production. Fertilization occurs and that produces cell H, and then cell H divides and produces the embryo. Okay, so that's very good. Let's see if we can just off the top of our heads name all these bits, because I'm sure we're going to be asked what organ G is and we're going to be asked what cell H is. So organ G is the ovary. The ovary produces the egg. Right. Then fertilization occurs when the nucleus from the sperm enters the egg and fuses with the egg's nucleus. So the nuclei fuse inside the egg, and that produces cell H, which is the zygote. The zygote. And then we have the embryo forms as it divides. Okay, well that's probably covered most of the answers. Let's have a look. Name organ G. Well, we got organ G, that's the ovary. All right, nice and neat. Describe what happens during fertilization. Well, I've just described it to you. The nucleus from the sperm fuses with the nucleus from the egg and forms the zygote, which is is going to be question 3, so we probably don't have to say that. The nucleus of the sperm fuses with the nucleus of the egg, right? And it's and they form the cell H, they form the zygote. So that's all good. All right. And finally, we've got to say, name the unspecialized cells that can be obtained from an embryo at a very early stage. All right. Well, you probably just get away with writing stem. And if you're not sure, that's probably the place to stop. You can say stem cells. You don't get any extra marks for writing embryonic stem cells, which is what they actually are. So you don't need to say that, but you'll get the mark for stem cells. Embryonic stem cells, embryonic, will impress the marker, but the marker unfortunately cannot give you another mark. So there you go, that's all you're going to get here. Any traps in this? One of the traps here is that you might get some of your terms mixed up and call this a fetus. Technically it's an embryo as soon as it becomes a zygote. In fact, adults are zygotes as well when we talk about alteration of generations. But in National 5 biology, you have to call this cell a zygote. All right? And then when it divides, it forms an embryo. And when the embryo reaches a certain stage and implants into the uterine wall and becomes attached to the placenta, then it's called a fetus. All right, so we've got the various stages of development during pregnancy, but the very first cell that's formed during fertilization, immediately after fertilization, is called the zygote. The other one you might get wrong here is you might not mention the nuclei. It's the DNA from the sperm that's important, okay? So you can't just say the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell. That doesn't work. You have to talk about the nuclei. It's the sperm's DNA, the genetic material from the sperm, the nuclei from the sperm, enters into the egg and fuses with its nucleus. So you've got two nuclei fusing, and that fusion at the end is the end point of fertilization and the formation of the zygote. All right? So you've got to be careful there. You can't just say the egg and the sperm fuse, because that's not going to get you the mark. All right? Hope you enjoyed that. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching this walkthrough from Doc Hill's study. I hope it helped you feel more confident about tackling these kinds of questions. Remember, the answers I've used are based on the SQA marking guide, but it's always important to understand the reasoning behind them, not just memorize the words. That's why I focus on the process, not just the final answer. If you've got any questions, or if something didn't quite click, drop a comment below and I'll get back to you. If you found this helpful, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified when the next walkthrough goes up. Good luck with your revision, and I'll see you in the next one.